Welcome to Inside Outside, a podcast that explores educational interests from both inside and outside of education. I'm Jeff Bailey, the Educational Insider.
And I'm John Gonzalez, the Educational Outsider. Jeff and I are excited to explore various topics related to education from multiple perspectives.
Whether you're a student, teacher, parent, or simply someone interested in the world of education, this podcast is for you.
We'll be speaking with a variety of guests to gain a better understanding of what's working and what's not in education.
Our goal is to spark meaningful conversations and encourage new ways of thinking about education, ultimately inspiring positive change and progress. We welcome you to Inside Outside and can't wait to explore the fascinating world of education together.
This episode, we are taking a look at the input of AI in the classroom.
Our guest today is Ryan Scheetz. He's a teacher from Coldwater High School. I worked with Ryan for, 15 years.
All right, let's get him on the line.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Ryan. Ryan, how are you?
Good.
Ryan, how long have you taught?
Oh, it's been 25 years.
See, I was telling John that I couldn't remember how old you were because you were a youngster when I had been teaching. Well, I'd probably been teaching 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, so I know, and you always think those people are way younger than you.
Yes, totally. Yeah.
And they never are. So, hey, Ryan, nice to meet you and nice to have you here on the podcast. I'm excited to talk to you. I'm excited to hear any good stories you might have about Mr. Bailey over here in his younger days. So we'll get to that in a little later. But, Jeff, you thought it'd be good to have Ryan on the show and add some perspective. What made you want to circle back with Ryan?
Well, actually, I had ran into another colleague that I worked with for a long time, and he said that Ryan had been involved with looking into the AI thing, and he was all kind of hot about it like I was hot about it when I came across it. And the thing that really struck me is Ryan and I used to get into these long conversations, usually like right at the end of lunch. And I thought, oh, I love those conversations because even though we didn't agree, we could disagree and go away and maybe made each other think about things, which I think is the perfect guest for this show.
Ryan, before we talk about AI, do you remember any of those specific conversations, what you might have disagreed on? Because I'd love to know.
Oh, yeah, but that's probably a whole other podcast, how many times we disagreed. No, but I agree. We would just have topics that would just dig deeply into those questions that you want to answer. And, you have to have somebody else's perspective to wrap your head around what's really going on when you get that deep. So I remember those conversations. I can't think of one in particular right now, but I do remember the impact it always had on me as well.
Well, I always tell the one. All right, so I actually think he teaches physics, and do you still teach the lower level math classes?
I teach calculus right now as well.
Oh, so he's on the dark side. So the English and social studies, that's the light side, and he's on the dark side. But we used to talk, Ryan, I told John about, you were teaching a lot of the lower level math classes, and we would talk about how those kids didn't have, even multiplication skills or division skills, but you're still expected to teach them algebra or geometry. And I was always the guy saying, well, just don't teach them that stuff. Teach them how to do multiplication and division. And, a teacher is always like, oh, I got to teach all my standards. And oftentimes the teachers I work with now, I'm always like, you got to have courage. You got to have courage. Just do what's right. So
I agree with you.
Now, go ahead, because that must be tough to be in that situation where you're like, you need some basic math skills before I can take you to the next level.
Well, I think it's going to touch directly on this AI as well. There's no doubt. I actually asked ChatGPT a couple days ago, how have our calculation skills across the nation been affected by calculators? And it gave me a great answer. They definitely have declined. And without that ability to calculate something quickly and smoothly, it just bogs down your ability to go further into a topic you want to go into. So you're right. You can't do algebra well if you cannot do multiplication at a reasonable level.
Yeah, and the thing that I always got at was there was always so much, to me, in a public school, there was always so much pressure that you had to teach that because that was what was going to be on the test. And I felt it as an English teacher. I know you felt it in science and math. And, I think your assessment is right. This AI stuff is going to be, it's a lot of what goes into what we're talking about.
So Ryan, a little background. I'm a journalist by trade, so I'm the outsider here on our Inside Outside podcast. So I don't come from the world of education. I come from the world of asking questions, But I'm curious, how did you get in education before? I know we're going to talk a lot about AI today, but I'm just curious how your story, where are you from, and how did you get into education?
So I actually graduated from Coldwater High School, which is the school I've been teaching at for over 20 years now. But I did not go through education as a proper student at all. I have probably a little bit of a reputation for having a rebellious attitude. Maybe similar to Jeff in some ways. I try not to make it something that is like against the grain and doesn't be productive. But I'm with Jeff. I don't agree with all these standards. I have to meet the students where they're at. I have to teach them that way. And that's how I got into teaching. I actually was going to go into engineering and was having a little bit of struggle trying to find my way as a young adult. And I had a teacher I had to start tutoring. I really liked it, and so next thing you know, I ended up selling my soul to public education.
You went to the dark side, as Jeff said.
The dark side is math and science.
Oh,
okay. Not education,
okay.
to be honest. But what's interesting about Ryan is that he had kind of a reputation of being a wild child when he was in high school.
Right.
And then when they hired him back, and that's kind of how people saw him. But he does have a really serious side to him, which, that's how I am too. I'm totally a goofball, but I also have that serious side to me. So I think that helps.
Ryan, I haven't seen the serious side. All I've seen is the goofball side. Does that make sense to you?
That's all I see sometimes too. I don't know what they
That's my public side. So you mentioned, calculators and sometimes when I bring this topic up with teachers, they'll be like, oh yeah, we faced calculators before and that was going to be the end of the world. Now, my personal view is this is a lot deeper than the calculator. This is probably the biggest force of change that I think we'll see in education. What impacts do you think AI is going to have on your classroom or just the traditional classroom in general?
Well, I think I agree with you. It definitely, I can see a path where this is going to blow the whole world up and you can go crazy on it, and it's going to have a huge impact. I'm hesitant to over-speculate how much impact it has because you know how we tend to do that sometimes. But I hope it can have a profound change, and it can almost be like a calculator. Like how the calculator was to mathematics, AI might be information. It just might open up the ability for us to access information at a much deeper or smoother level. Synthesize things where I don't have to have gone through a master's degree program in physics to start asking questions about high-end physics, maybe.
Yep.
I think there's a lot of things this could open up. And I just don't think we'll know what those are for years to come.
Yeah, I think you're right. One of the key things that I've come up with and is that I think the biggest thing right now that we can work on, and what, my job is I do instructional support and technology. I'm looking at my teachers and saying, we need to look at what is actual learning and what is actual work. And right now I think school is more about the work and less about the learning. And we need to switch that around. So it needs to be more about what we're trying to learn and what work we're doing. And ChatGPT actually takes away a lot of the work that has to go into education, I think, for kids.
Yeah, that might be the best analogy I've heard, or the best approach I've heard yet about that. I totally agree. It can take away me having to sit down and grind through writing a code or grind through writing music. But I must have enough knowledge and expertise and creativity to ask it to do good things.
Right. And that's actually when I tell people, when teachers say, well, they did it on ChatGPT, is that plagiarism? I'm like, well, it kind of depends because the content that you get back from it is really dependent on how well you can ask questions. And it's kind of a blurry area for a lot of people because it does take away some of the work, like I said. And so that a lot of teachers, that's what they rely on is the work.
Yes, and sometimes we think that is where the learning occurs. And I think there's some truth to that, and we're going to have to find a balance.
Yeah.
But the occur in different ways, and you can just let the tool do the work.
Yeah.
You can be a great carpenter and a brilliant architect and never actually hammer a nail into anything.
Yes. Have you, run into any teachers' reactions to this so far?
Oh, yes. And I think you would probably suspect it's true. The initial reaction, I believe, comes from fear. And a lot of the teachers can't let go of the tool we have in front of us. And they just see the double-edged sword of the cheating that could occur, or the lack of learning that might occur.
Right.
And can't yet see how we will have to restructure what we do to make sure learning is occurring alongside of these tools that we use.
Yeah, and I've spent a lot. We literally started goofing around with this like 4 months ago, and the funny thing about it is we were playing around with it in the office, and there were 3 or 4 of us, and we were trying to do different prompts and so on. And then literally within 2 days, we had kids they had teachers saying, "I think these kids are doing this, or we're cheating or getting this online, but I can't find anything." And so it was really interesting to see how quickly the whole thing came on. But in my research over these 4 months, is the way to combat this is totally just good teaching strategies. It's just doing the things that we know are best practices, like focusing on the process of learning more than on the final product. And I think teachers in general, it's always about the final product. It's about how the essay was or how you did on the test. And this is another thing that's going to flip the game. Well, now it's going to be about how did you get to where you did at the final assessment. And there's going to be a lot more focus on that.
Yeah, and I think even more importantly, if you start using something like ChatGPT to help you investigate something, new questions arise that you may never even thought of. I've learned that I have a bias to dismiss things that ChatGPT can do because I think it can't do it.
That's totally true. And there actually is very little it can't do.
Yes. So the question is, what can we do that it can't do, and how do we interact with it to help guide learning?
Yep. I had a teacher. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have teachers or others that I'll talk to them about it. I'll share with them. They'll think I'm all crazy about it. But then they'll ask it, can it do this? And I'll just kind of look at them like how I never thought of that before. So my interactions and my discussions with other colleagues and even you help me think of other ways that this could be used, and I might expand my vision of this.
Yeah, and as I've been talking to teachers, and I've actually, had 2 or 3 different interactions, PD wise and so on with teachers. And the key thing is, and John will relate to this too, because he's actually done this, is until you get people on it and you ask them to do things that are realistic things that they do in their day-to-day life, they don't believe in it. John, tell us about your experience, because you were a skeptic.
Yeah, I guess I was a little bit of a skeptic, only from the standpoint of education, because I started thinking of it like in that sense that I think most people do, right? Oh, it's going to help me cheat on my test, or help me write my essay, and I can mask it so they can tell it's just they'll think it's mine. And I started thinking like, well, that's just not right. It's not fair. It's not moral. It's not ethical. And I don't know whether I should embrace this or not. Also as a writer, a creative type, I'm like, well, I don't need a machine to tell me how to think, right? I need a machine to maybe calculate things or give me ideas. So I was a little skeptical. Once I started to dive into what it can do, it saved a lot of time, especially from an organizational standpoint. Like I was, I don't know if this is an appropriate forum to bring it up, but I was doing some research on how to lead a beer tour, right? To take students or take people that are interested in how the brewing process happens, right? And I know how it happens, but I really don't know if I can put it together. So I asked ChatGPT to outline step-by-step process of the brewing process, whether it's beer or wine or whatever you're doing. And I was like, oh, it gave me a structure. All of my thoughts were already there. It helped me organize them. And I thought, oh, now I'm gonna come up with stories. I want to aim this to women in their late teens, early 20s that are just new or learning more about it, and explain it through their eyes. So once I started to explore the different ways of getting that information and presenting the information, it helped me think through the process better and give me more options and more relatable. It almost tested me, pushed me to think differently. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. It's had an effect on me to the point where sometimes I interact with it and I step back and I simply say to myself, what am I interacting with? What is this thing that is in front of me?
Yeah,
I know it's not a human.
Go ahead.
I know it's not a human with intelligence, but it's offering me some different perspectives and some information that humans have never offered me before. In class, I've used it in a fun way. I think right now it's just a novelty for me because I don't yet know how to use it properly. But I've used it to create performance tasks that students will do on soccer, the students will do on music, but they're all of the same algebra topic. So I can create individual questions for students that they will do, and it just creates them for me.
Yeah, that's actually that, when I talk to teachers about it, I'm telling them, I used to spend hours and hours and hours scouring the internet trying to find a better way to teach something, or I would write different prompts or different questions. And this takes all that work away from it. So I really, I look at, as a teacher, I'm like, yeah, we should totally be using this because it's like having 1,000 people on staff working for you and doing all that thinking.
Were you in our school when we had to do unit by design and they started that, or who left before that?
I was actually laughing with Jay about it because I've been gone for 5 years. And when the year I left, they started working on that. And
we still don't have it complete. I shouldn't say that on this podcast.
Oh, no, it made me laugh like crazy because I actually tell my principal all the time, if teachers want to stall something, they can stall it and they'll stall it forever. And so that's a good story for that. But, that's the type of work that this can complete too, because I'm helping the English department here write learning objectives, and ChatGPT did them all. And then I gave it to him and said, hey, now this is a draft. Now you make it what works for you, but this is what, probably all the text online says about this. And the same thing about what you're talking about, the UBD stuff. We spend a lot of time in education on things that are a waste of time.
So when you bring that up, I see this. We have a whole list of learning objectives, but the hardest part about that is getting that meat of that content on paper and then sorting through it and making it work for you. At bare minimum, ChatGPT can do the meat of that work, and then I can just individualize this for whatever school or content I'm working with.
Absolutely, and I actually think with ChatGPT and AI coming on, that the standards, which I actually detested as a teacher because they're so abstract, and everybody could make them mean what they want to mean, but they're going to be so important to anchor education and really decide what it is we're trying to teach. And like I said earlier, and what's work that we just have kids do.
Yes, and that's like, instead of doing all the work, let me look at this document, learn, make sure my curriculum is in place, and save myself hours of just putting all this stuff together.
Hey, Ryan, before we let you go, and we appreciate your time here with us against John Gonzalez and Jeff Bailey on the Inside Outside podcast, where we explore AI, ChatGPT, and how it impacts education. In fact, if you missed our previous episode, our first episode, where we talk a little bit more about that, you can definitely check it out. Just search for Inside Outside, and it'll tell you where to go on any of the podcast platforms. We'd appreciate you joining the conversation. And if you want to email us too, you can find us always here at West Catholic High School in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I'm curious, and I hate to be ageist here, right? But are you a youngster? Yeah. We're all about the same age. I think I'm the oldest one here. But are you finding when you are having these discussions with coworkers and fellow teachers, I guess it would be kind of, ageist to say, well, the young people kind of get it, but the older people don't. But I'm guessing because as a teacher, there's some core, beliefs in how we teach that kind of stretch the boundary, right, of all ages. And it's kind of, threatening the way we teach as teachers across the board, regardless of how old you are.
I think that's absolutely true. I think that when they see the sheen and that is the light that they see strongest out of all of this, they just can't look to the other things and see the possibilities. And they think, okay, this is going to totally change how I have to do things. I'm going to have AI determine whether they're cheating or not. And they get to that fall apart. I've had many of those discussions, and I don't think the staff as a group has yet opened their eyes to what kind of tool we have in front of them.
Yeah, I think you're right. Hey, you know what? Before we leave, if you haven't done this yet, ask it to grade a kid's paper, like a typed paper. Put the rubric in there and ask it to grade it. It will grade papers.
Yes, I asked it too. It falters a little bit on some mathematics every now and then.
Yes, it does. And actually, my wife told me the other day, it screws up math. I'm like, yeah, but it won't forever.
No, exactly. I see that coming. Probably the ChatGPT 4, which I haven't had access to yet.
Yeah.
We'll be doing.
Well, Ryan,
one of my concerns in all of this, before I let you guys go, sorry.
Okay. No, you're fine.
Concern is just we have to be careful on what this does to a student who isn't prepared to use it. We see so much anxiety and depression and mental health disorders coming from social media that I think this has the potential to bring that type of thing in also. We really do need to watch carefully which sides of the story.
That's a great topic to bring up for a future podcast, because that in itself, the way I see it, Ryan and Jeff, is that I see there will be classrooms in the very near future teaching how to use this technology. The whole classes devoted to the details, what you can learn, how to learn it, how to put it into practice, and that goes into what you're just saying there about students and being able to do it properly and going to their mental health, and because there's some things already that when I in some of my research, which is not as extensive as Jeff's, he's 4 months, I'm only a month in, but I'm like seeing already some slippery slopes.
Absolutely, and to me that instruction of ChatGPT and how to use that has to be in the classroom of every class. And also, I think I agree with you, but on the other side, I would say if we do this right, kids will be more engaged in classes because it's going to focus more on the process and what you do in class and rather than the outcome that they can just turn it in and be separate from the class.
I agree that it will help. We might even lower the floor of the entry point to some high-end topics.
Yes.
You don't have to be great at every computational skill in the world to enter the realm of chemistry or physics and learn creativity.
Perfect.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for joining us. We appreciate it. And we'll see you in Coldwater country, right?
Yeah.
Yes, you will.
There's a brewery down there. We'll be down there.
All right. Hey, thank you, guys. I'll talk to you later.
Thank you, Ryan. Sounds good. Great guy to talk to. A lot of fun.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Just very personable and funny. He really was considered a wild child. People would say, you should hear the stories about Ryan. And, I just, I'm not a math or science guy, and I've told you that a million times, but I always appreciate, the things that teachers share in common. And you probably have the same thing about, people in journalism.
Right.
That, if you're just sharing things, you have certain guidelines, you might do, cover different things, but in the end, it's all kind of the same.
Yeah, I would agree.
So
I would agree with that.
Yeah. So, when Ryan was talking about the AI, I was thinking about a website that I was pretty excited about. And I would encourage anybody who's listening to check it out because it really is, AI as we think of ChatGPT, and a lot of the AI out there right now is built upon that. And so this website that I found is called Futurepedia. You can Google that and come across that. And Futurepedia has the links. It's like, I think it calls itself the encyclopedia of all the AI tools that are out there. And literally things are coming out every day. I think it's like 10 to 15 new tools every single day. And I know you went in there and checked it out. What was your initial thought?
Yeah, no, first I was like, okay, how do I use this? I mean, that's part of the learning curve, which is why it led me to say that I think we should be teaching how to use these technologies that are out there. But for me, I just did a research on audio, how to improve my audio skills. And within 5 minutes, I had a whole tutorial of how to increase the quality of my audio for my podcast. And I was impressed, wow, I wouldn't even known this was out there. And also, other people are getting into it. Google, I got an email from Google. Did you get this as well?
Is it the Bard?
The Bard, yeah. Meet Bard, an early experiment by Google. Because you're a Google One member, blah, blah, blah. We'd like to offer you an opportunity to be one of the first to sign up for the new Bard experience. Think of Bard as your creative and helpful collaborator here to bring your ideas to life using generative AI.
Yeah, and
it's everywhere.
It's everywhere, and I would encourage everybody that, Chat GTP. All you got to do is sign up for an account, and you'll get in, and it is not stable. Just so you know, so sometimes you'll get kicked out, sometimes you won't be able to get in. But when you do get in, have it do some of the tasks that you want to do, and you'll find it's incredible because you're going to see that everywhere. And actually, at Futurepedia, a lot of the things that they're very they're very hyper focused on who their audience is. So when you go in there, like you found something for sound, but depending on if you're a coder, they might have some AI tool that they've built for coding, and so it's kind of like now I can see what's out there. Now I'm a cheapskate, so I always set the filter to free. But there are things that you can, freemium. One of the things that I saw was a freemium item is you could upload a picture of yourself, and it would use AI to create the perfect social media profile picture for $8. I don't really care about that. I'm past the point of really caring what I look like.
I see that. I'm joking.
But I do see,
that
it's a good tool that I would encourage teachers. I would encourage actually anybody to go out and check out and just kind of take a look at what AI can do and kind of imagine how it's going to change what you do on a daily basis, not just tomorrow, but into the future. Because my grandma always thought robots were going to replace everybody, and that didn't happen. And I think there's people that are fearful, like Ryan said, about AI and that it's going to replace everybody, but it won't.
No.
We just have to learn how to use it and use it for all of our benefit.
All right, folks, thanks again for joining the podcast. We will see you on the next one. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Take care. Goodbye.